Hola. In this video, we're going to talk about conjugating regular verbs in Spanish in the present tense. Okay, and so the first thing we really need to talk about is what conjugating is, what this term even means. Because we have all these verbs in Spanish, like hablar, and hablar means to speak. And the verb hablar is actually what's called an infinitive. The infinitive really doesn't do a whole lot for us. There are times and places for the infinitives, but most of the time we need to change the infinitive into something else to make an actual sentence. We always need to have a conjugated verb in a sentence to make it an actual complete sentence. So we need to change hablar, to speak, into something else. So if we want to say something like I speak, then we need to change the verb hablar to fit the I person, to fit the yo form. And the basic process for that is to take our infinitive, hablar, and then take the two letters off of the end. Kind of 1, 2, we get rid of those last two letters, because those are the infinitive ending. So we're left with the stem, ab. We're going to reuse that stem, yo, ab, and then we add on the ending that matches with our yo form, which for the present tense and for these AR verbs is o. So to say I speak, yo hablo. Right? But we don't always want to talk about ourselves. We do want to talk about other people at times. So we need to know what the other endings are, other than just for the yo form. So I'll make a little bit more room in our table here. Okay, so let's see what these endings are for AR verbs. And by AR verbs, I mean that they end in the letters AR. There are 3 basic types of infinitives. There are verbs that end in AR, verbs that end in ER, and verbs that end in IR. So we're going to just take a look in this table for the verbs that end in AR, as does hablar. So we already know for the yo form, if the yo ending is O, to, as, or for the vos form that's used in Costa Rica, as, with an accent. Él, usted, a, nosotros, amos, vosotros, ais, ellos, ustedes, a. And do notice that the vosotros form does have an accent over the A, as does the A in the vos form. And so as an example, if we want to say that we swim, start with nadar, which is the infinitive. So we want to get rid of the last 2 letters there. We're left with the stem, nad. And we want to use the nosotros ending, which would be amos, so nadamos, we swim. And the endings for the ER and IR verbs are different, and we do use different endings for these. For the O form, it actually ends up staying the same, O. The to form, ace, or the vos form, ace with an accent, meaning that the emphasis is placed on that syllable. Él, usted, nosotros, hemos, vosotros, es, with an accent over the E, ellos, ustedes, en. And so to see a few examples then of these ER-IR verbs, let's take the verb comer. And we want to conjugate the verb comer for ella, to say that she eats. So we have comer. Again, we take off the last two letters of that infinitive. We repeat the stem, com, and then we look in our conjugation table for ella to see that the ending is a. Ella come. Now, something important to note here is that we're only talking about the regular verbs right now. And there are different kinds of verbs that use different rules for conjugation. The regular verbs are very easy because we just follow through with our steps and we just end the verb with our endings that we see in our tables. But there are also go-go verbs, such as tener, which for the yo form uses the conjugation tengo. Instead of simply having an O in the end, we have this extra G. There are also stem-changing verbs, such as jugar, which in the O form become juego, not simply jugo, but juego. And we also have irregular verbs. And an example of an irregular verb would be ser, yo soy. I am from the United States, soy estadounidense. It's a completely irregular verb. Right now we are only talking about the regular verbs. And we haven't mentioned these other classes of verbs, but we will in the future. Alright, so now let's do a little bit of practice. What I want you to do is take the verb and then conjugate it for the form that is shown. And remember to use the conjugation tables to help you. Go ahead and pause the video right now. That way you can take a moment to work on it, and then I'll come back and explain the answers. Alright, so now I'm going to go over the answers. Number 1, tú andas, you walk. Because remember, you take the last two letters of the infinitive, andar, meaning to walk. So we have to take off the last two to actually conjugate it. And then we add on our to ending, which for an AR verb is as. Tú andas. Ellos escriben. Now, don't forget that escribir is an IR verb. So that is why we have N at the end of it. Ellos escriben, as opposed to ellos escriban. Right? Escribir is not an AR verb. It does not use the same conjugation charts as AR verbs do. We have to look over in our ER, IR charts to then find our ending. Ellos escriben, they write. Vos hablas, with the accent. You very familiar speak. Vos hablas. Yo aprendo. And now it is an ER verb, but since we're in the yo form, it is a little bit easier because the ER and the AR verbs use the same ending for the yo form. And then nosotros y, after we take off the last two letters, estudiamos. It's an AR verb, and it's also for nosotros, so that's why we have amos at the end of it. Right. Adios.